All right, welcome to the Grief Dreams podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening again. We always appreciate you being here and being supportive of the podcast and listening to the stories that people want to share. So the host today is me, which is Dr. Joshua Black. Our guest host couldn't be here at this time. That's okay. I'm going to run solo and we're going to talk to our next guest. So today we have on Ryan Weaver, who is an all-American rock and country music artist who proudly served as an active duty Black Hawk Helicopter Aviator in the United States Army. Weaver began his music career in 2005 while still on active duty, playing the club and festival circuit throughout the Southeast. His performances are known for their unique blend of high-octane original songs and rock and cover material, combined with the heartfelt message and genuine humor. In 2017, Ryan signed on with PBR, which is the Professional Bull Riders, replacing Steven Tyler as the headlining act for the PBR World Finals at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. Starting in 2008 with a concert at Madison Square Garden, Ryan spent the year touring the nation, honoring our nation's heroes, performing in venues like the AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, Spirit Center in Kansas City, Golden One Center in Sacramento, and many more. His music and speaking engagements are highly influenced by his journey through grief. Ryan has suffered the death of his brother Aaron and his brother-in-law Randy while they were on active duty. Both of his brothers' ultimate sacrifices continue to fuel Ryan's fire to accomplish his dreams in music, and you can find his latest EP titled Celebrate America on his website, weavercountry.com, or I guess you find it on iTunes also. So Ryan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Man, I can't thank you enough for having me. I've been round and round trying to get this scheduled, and it's finally great to be finally on the phone with you. Finally.
Finally, yes. Hey, some things are just meant to happen later than sooner, and that's okay. We're patient here on the podcast. We know lives happen. People have to go through their journey, and like sometimes it's all about timing. And so I'm guessing this is a perfect time to have this conversation in whatever vehicle or form we're in. So
yeah, absolutely. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, and I sort of and for me, as I went through life, and especially with the death and stuff, like finding patience with yourself and with life is one of, I guess, my greater strengths now. Before, it's like I needed things to happen, and when they didn't happen, I'd get anxious or I get worried. But now I'm so more lenient and having time flow a certain way, knowing that I don't really know all the answers and that things will happen when they're supposed to.
Absolutely.
So we met, about a year ago at the TAPS National Military Survivor Seminar, and you put on a fantastic show. I was, people say, oh, musicians coming on. I'm like, oh, cool. But when you started playing and you started talking, I got emotional. I got really involved with your story, and I had a phenomenal time. And I didn't want you to stop playing, tell you the truth. I wanted you to keep going. But like the emotion I felt myself, but also at the table I was at, was phenomenal. You really struck people's hearts. And I want to just, say thank you for that, because it means your music is written from an honest place and it is impacting people's grief journey.
Well, I appreciate that. One of the most important things as an artist for me to do is connect with an audience, or any audience I'm standing in front of. And, one of the things that I've liked to say when folks ask me, what kind of a show do you have? What is your performance about? If someone were to come and see a Ryan Weaver show, what would they expect? And I tell them I would hope by the time that they got done watching my show, they would feel as if they could stand on stage there with me as a friend and knew me as a person just as much as an artist, and with my music, but also my story. And, that connecting is extremely important, because music has a way of being able to reach out and cross barriers regardless of your background or what you've been through or what you thought you wanted from your life. It can change you just in one song, and to be able to do that for an hour and a half concert, say, or just the few songs that you got to see, my hopes are that every single person that gets to watch one of my shows feels exactly the same way you did.
That's beautiful. And Well, has music always done that to you? Is that one reason why you gravitated towards a singing career?
I started in singing late in my life, and I didn't really know that it was something I was good at until actually in my late 20s when I was going through flight school and was doing singing competitions, karaoke competitions to help pay my bills. I was broke and going through the middle of a divorce in the middle of flight school, and it just helped out with that financial side of it, and also something to do that was relatively inexpensive as entertainment. And it once I got over to Iraq and started writing songs, and then Aaron died, and that really made me take stock of my life. And I saw that my life was passing me by. Essentially, I was flying helicopters for a living, but it was really something that I did following in his footsteps, my older brother Steve's footsteps. And with the music, it turned into something that I could do for myself that I felt that I was decent at. I didn't think that I was great at it, but I loved doing it. And it was something, once Aaron died, I was following in his footsteps almost my entire life, and one way or another. And for the first time in my life, I was going to have to make my own path. And music was the direction that I went at that point. So, a lot of folks, they have the story in country music that they started singing back when they were 3 years old and doing, picked up the guitar and their parents listened to Hank and all that kind of stuff. And I just don't have the same story. My background is significantly different. Not to say that there's anything wrong with their background. Mine's just different.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's very true. I'm guessing you listened to music prior to that, though. Like it was part of your
your
culture. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, my older brother Steve, he loved the Eagles and Journey and the Steve Miller Band, and I mean there's just so much of the classic rock that was out there that he listened to. But when I grew up, I listened to all the boy bands, and then I got into the hair band, Bon Jovi, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, and that's really where my influence on the country music side is. Folks say country music isn't country music, but there's so much of a wide range of genres that really don't fit into any specific genre, so they kind of get lumped into country music, and we just call mine rockin' country, and it's kind of the 80s rock infused country music that has the lyrical content that's a little bit different than the typical stuff that's on the radio, because I didn't grow up with a bunch of friends going to bonfires underneath, fireflies in the moonlight, drinking a Coors Light with your girlfriend in cut-off jeans on a tailgate of your pickup truck on a riverbank. I think I pretty much got every cliche in country music put in one sentence there, but we kind of do it a little bit differently. I grew up in small town USA, and I would say it's the all-American small town USA, and then went in the military at 18 years old and spent the majority of my adult life in the military, as opposed to in that kind of backwoods pickup truck scene. There's nothing wrong with it. It sells a lot of records. Folks love that kind of music. I am a huge fan of some of the songs that are out there and some of the artists that are out there. It's just not what I've taken the route to do, to try and stay true to who I am and genuine as an artist. And that's kind of the route, we decided to go.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful to stay true to who you are. It's one of the harder things to do because people always have things that you should do to sell more or be more. But when you can stay true to yourself, like you're a different person, you connect differently, and people can see that. I really believe that.
Yeah.
And so you spent your whole basically 18 plus in the military. Was this something that was part of your family life? Like was your dad or your mother or any of your family members a part of the military before you?
Yes, my grandfather was an Air Force World War II veteran. He was a belly gunner in World War II. My dad that raised us was a Marine. My oldest brother, Steve, was Army. Aaron, who was killed in action in 2004, was Army. My brother-in-law, Randy, who was killed in action in 2013, was Army. My sister, Regina, was Air Force. I was Army. My uncle was Navy. I mean, we have a whole military family, essentially. And, we all went different routes and ended up coming back to aviation. It's coming together in the aviation field, which is kind of interesting because I went military intelligence. Both my brothers were in the Ranger Regiment. Aaron was actually in Somalia in the ambush in Mogadishu that Black Hawk Down was made after. And they took the hardcore route, and I took the easy route. I went military intelligence and flipped over to be a Black Hawk Aviator, and they went Ranger Airborne, hardcore, and ended up being Kiowa Warrior pilots in the Army instead. But Randy, my brother-in-law, he was actually a Black Hawk Aviator as well. So that's the routes we all went different routes initially, and ended up coming together as aviators. It's kind of cool.
It is pretty cool. So why being aviator? What was so different or special about that for you?
Because it was cool to be called an aviator, man. Because I wanted to be like a low speed, low drag Tom Cruise, man.
Yeah. I hear they're making a new one, Top Gun 2 or something.
Yeah, it's already done from my understanding, and yeah. So I don't know whether I want to watch it or not, because I heard he was not very kind to the sailors on the ship, but that's beside the point. We'll find out the truth. We'll find out the truth. That could be fake news.
That's right. That's very true. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I've been in a helicopter once. My dad was really into flying helicopters. I believe, if I don't get this wrong, he was fighting fires in BC when my mom got pregnant. And so he had to stop, and he basically became an engineer. But he always wanted to be in the air. He felt, I don't know if he felt free, or he felt different than he was on land. And you could tell, like, I think once he had a family and he couldn't do that anymore, I think a little joy came out of his life.
Right. I mean, aviation is a passion for folks that really love to do it. I mean, Aaron and Steve were both passionate. Steve, my oldest brother, still flies for a civilian company. And quite honestly, for me, and everybody, it's cool to say, everybody, like, oh man, that must have been awesome being a Black Hawk helicopter pilot. It's cool to say it, and it's cool to say that I did it. And it really was, there were moments, but for me, most of my flight hours were combat hours, and it really became much more technical and stressful than it was enjoyable, simply because every situation that when you're coming up off the ground in the helicopter, there's a chance that you're not going to come down in one piece. And because we just had helicopters getting shot out of the sky left and right when I was in Iraq, and my brother, obviously his helicopter, I flew the day that he was shot down, and we came back to the company command post to the news that there had been a Black Hawk shot down. And it was not the first. It was one of several helicopters over the span of a couple months that came out of the sky. And it was kind of a goal for the insurgents over there to bring helicopters down, because they knew that once, if a helicopter got shot down, that everybody was going to come towards it, and then it would just give them more people to shoot at too. So, even though Aaron was in the back of a medevac helicopter with a big red cross on the side, the insurgents didn't care about it, and we knew every time we got up in the air to fly that there was not just the inherent danger of crashing, which is something that in aviation is there, but add all the outside factors of bullets flying at you and RPGs flying at you and birds flying at you and all kinds of stuff, because it was also migratory bird season apparently over there. And there's just so much stuff that was going on at one time, and it just didn't make it as enjoyable for me as civilian flying. I've flown a couple times since then, and actually really enjoyed flying since then, but I didn't really have a great time as an aviator, in combat and flying in the military. Right.
Yeah, I can't imagine every time you go up, right, you're saying, like, you may not be coming back.
Yeah, and I mean, it's something that obviously we're in combat, and it's something you're assuming that risk when you sign on the dotted line to give the ultimate sacrifice, like both my brothers did, and it's part of it, but still doesn't make it enjoyable.
That's true. That's so true. So, what was your reaction like when you found out that it was Aaron that was in that helicopter?
Well, so the day I flew that day, and like I said, we came back to the company CP, and it was on the news, Fox News, that Blackhawk had been shot down west of Baghdad. And my crew chief came in behind me, and he dropped all his gear and said, "Man, my parents think I'm dead right now." And I said, "Well, dude, just get on the internet, let them know that," because we had an internet cafe there where you could reach out and talk to folks. And so just let them know that you're okay. Everything will be fine. Yeah, everybody's going to be worried right now, but they'll be waiting to hear from you. So as soon as you can get on, let them know. And then I got on Yahoo Instant Messenger with my mom, and she's when I logged on, she saw that I was on, and she said, "Oh, I'm glad you're okay. I didn't think it was you because they did say that it was a medevac helicopter." And I said, "No, I'm safe. Everything's good." And got off Yahoo Instant Messenger with her because I had to actually stay up that night to reverse out because I was going to fly the next night, and I flew that day, so I had to fly next night. But and then they showed up at her door shortly after that and told her that Aaron had been killed in action, and I didn't know about it. I woke up in the morning, was woken up in the morning, and I was woken up early. I was supposed to sleep in till noon so that I could do my laundry and then transfer out from days to nights, and as they call it, reverse out. And it was like 8:33 exactly. Like, no, it wasn't like, it was 8:33 exactly. And they came in and shook my foot and said the company commander needed to see me in his tent. And I walked in there, and the chaplain was sitting there, and I thought something had happened to my dad. And they read the Red Cross message that Aaron had been killed in action. And at that point, I lost I lost it. I lost. There was no. I can't say that in that moment that, other than I will tell you that my wife saw it a second time, but it was even worse. But she saw it a second time when Randy was killed in action. But because it felt like it had happened all over again. And although he was not my full blood sibling, I loved him, but I was crushed for my sister in that regard. But when I found out about Aaron, I had to call my parents, and my mom's apologizing to me and saying, I'm like, "Mom, you just lost your son." And she's told me, you're over there all alone, and you need to be here with family. And I mean, that's how mom thinks. And then I called my dad, and it was the first time I'd ever heard my dad cry, and I heard him cry on the phone, and it was horrible. It was I wouldn't wish that moment on anyone. And we just we made it through it, and then I got back home, and it took me 4 days to get back home. And there's just that whole day I could tell you a story that would last for hours on that whole day, and how different circumstances and things that I was dealing with, just simple things from trying to count the pairs of underwear you got to have to be able to get from where you are to where you're going to be and what you need, and not even being able to think straight enough to say, I got to do this, and having to wash your clothes still, and then having your company commander steam iron the water out of your underwear and your socks because you're just so lost trying to figure it out. But just something so simple, and going from that, and then just being in a state of shock and numbness, traveling home, and finally got home, and it was I showed up to 100 news cameras at the Tampa International Airport, and it was just a huge blur, huge hole to dig myself out of, where everything was just nothing was right, obviously. So anyway, that's hopefully a decent enough description of a moment in my life that, once again, I said I'd never wish on anybody.
Yeah, no, you could feel the confusion, and like the way you explained it, you're just like, wow, like you realize people that are dying a lot in the military, and this is the stuff you have to deal with as you continue to say, like, sometimes you don't get the time to go back. You got to continue to fight or continue to do the job, and how difficult that must be for anyone in war times, especially, to perform the duties, because like you lose your brothers, you lose your friends, and what you got to continue to move forward. It's like, I don't know how, like when my dad died, I was in shock too. I just broke down. I couldn't do anything for about a day there. But I'm glad you're able to go home and spend that time with family. Did you ever go back like after that and fly, or did you? Is that when your career started taking off?
No, that was the last day Aaron died. When he died was the last day I flew.
Hmm.
The last day I flew Blackhawks, I flew that day, and that was it. I actually, I felt one of the smartest decisions that I could make for me as a person to be able to heal, but also for anyone that would be in an aircraft with me. There's an immense amount of responsibility for other people's lives in that circumstance, and in every circumstance when you're in control of a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment that is not meant to fly. It's designed to crash. It's not meant to fly by itself anyway. Had to make the decision as to whether I felt it was the right thing for me to continue to do that, or to, to find a different path at that point. And I sent a letter to my commander and said that I was going to exercise my sole survivor rights. Because although Steve, my oldest brother, is my brother, he's my half brother by adoption, and Aaron and I were the only full blood siblings, and our biological father did not have another son, so it was under the Sole Survivor Act, and then there's a provision if you're a military service member deployed to combat and you lose a sibling, then you're also considered a sole survivor in that regard too. But I personally, it took me 2 years to look at a Blackhawk after that. It was an abnormal, uncomfortable, just, painful feeling to look up in the sky, even when I would hear a Blackhawk flying over, because I would know the sound of it, because the only thing that I could think about was it coming out of the sky and Aaron in it. And it just, everybody deals with loss differently, and there's so many guys and gals that are in combat that tell me stories all the time about losing their fellow soldiers or losing folks like that, and they deal with it in such a significantly different way. And it's tough to figure out whether when I think about that stuff, about how they were able to do it. And then I couldn't look at a helicopter. There's no way I could comfortably and reasonably say that I would be able to have control of that aircraft and make sure without question that I was doing everything I could to keep everyone in that aircraft safe, because my mind was just not in it. Plus, I couldn't look at them, much less fly one. It was tough. It was a really tough moment and a really tough decision to make it, but I think it was the best decision I could have made, considering what I was going through. So.
Yeah, I think you said your logic was right, because you're responsible for so much more than just yourself. And you have to, I'm glad you're aware of that, because some people will try to go right back to what their routine was to try to keep the normality of life. But for you, it was like a double loss, because now you've also lost that part of yourself, which you've been trained to be. And so,
Yeah.
wow, that's so tough. That's so tough. So when was it that you could look at a helicopter? So what changed between the first couple of years versus, I guess, now?
Honestly, I think that the closest I got to a helicopter that really where I felt comfortable doing it was when Randy, my brother-in-law, we were up in Kansas at Fort Riley, and he took me in to tour their hangar, and it was one of the first times that I got close to a Blackhawk after that. I think that was the first time really and it was several years after that, obviously, but when I felt more comfortable in it. But even, so at that point, it still feels weird, or felt weird. But it was not to the point to where it was almost as if I had a new perspective to take, that we had, another family member that was doing it. And it's just, it's unfathomable to look at a piece of equipment like that and know. I mean, I have pictures of the crash site and different things because I wanted to know and to see what that helicopter was after it crashed, and then see it back to as what I remembered it, and it kind of brought that positivity back into seeing it again, and also with Randy, and then of course we went through it all over again, and it was different this time though because I think it wasn't for me. I wasn't flying him every day, and it wasn't a combat situation and whatnot. So I mean, I've seen Black Hawk since then, and it really just doesn't. I think that I got past that, and that realizing that just because it was a Black Hawk in the sky, that it wasn't directly related to Aaron by any means, and I think that I had to come to grips with that myself. But yeah, we got to hang out with my son and Randy and my daughter, and we're looking at the inside of it, and it was a different kind of helicopter with a different cockpit and that kind of stuff. So it was just a different experience that we were seeing and having. So I think it really kind of changed my perspective a little bit again, even more. So.
And then so how long after till Randy died?
He died in 2013. So it was, I believe, the year before he actually died was when it may have been like a half a year or a year before he died that we got to tour in the Black Hawk and whatnot. So to experience that with him.
Well, it's nice you have that memory.
Yeah, absolutely.
With him, yeah. And almost like you say, like you could say too, he helped show you that it wasn't what it once was. And a lot of times I think people have these fears and stuff, and we don't know when they go away because we avoid them so often. But you must have worked on something throughout that time that there was healing taking place. And so when you saw it, you just had a different feel to it. And I think that's beautiful.
I think the music,
realize that.
Yeah, I think the music had something to do with it as well. I mean, obviously being able to talk about Aaron on a regular basis and be able to tell his story every time I got on stage for years, I think, it's cathartic and was very, it was a promise that I made, and plus being able to support nonprofit organizations and different groups that were helping our fellow service members and heroes, that really was, I think, a way for me to be able to continue to serve, and it also helped in healing as well. So, I think that it was a pretty, I would say, thorough healing therapy year, or several years in music, I would say. And then, of course, when it happened with Randy, it brought it all back, and I seem to bounce back a little bit quicker on that. And it's not because I loved him any less, but I think that one of the things that was tough for me to deal with when Aaron died was that initial feeling of survivor's remorse, that I made it back and he didn't, but then also feeling that if I hurt any less, that I loved him any less. And I think, the folks that I talked to, especially when we were at TAPS, that's something that I think is common with a lot of new losses, when it's fresh. That's when I spoke about it and said that the moment that you make the decision to live your life honoring their memory and the life that they lived, and realize that you have the choice to do that, when you make that decision wholeheartedly with all of your heart, it takes 1,000,000 pounds of weight off your shoulders. Because for me, I was a miserable person and hollow and guarded, I would say, for probably 2 years after Aaron died. I would say miserable, but the music really started helping me heal. But I was just hollow. There wasn't a lot of room for me to love there. Yeah. And it's interesting that I say that now, because I think that, especially like when I met my wife, and I found that there was so much out there that you could love, and it's tough when you go through those losses. But like I said, when I made that decision, probably the best advice that I can give anybody when they're going through it, and giving them the reassurance that it is going to happen, that you are going to come to that moment. If you choose to, it can happen whenever you choose to, but you have to wholeheartedly make that decision and know that the hurt can be replaced with moving forward, but with, in their memory, but just living your life, because you have the choice to do so. It doesn't make it any less. It just replaces or fills that void of them not being there, and the hurt that was actually taking it, which is actually not healthy. To be hurting and hurting and hurting, obviously everyone has to grieve, but it can be detrimental to your relationships and detrimental to everything else. So I wouldn't say the quicker, but when it's the right time for you to make that decision, it does lift 1 million pounds of weight off your shoulders to make that decision.
That's so interesting you say that, because I think you're right. People get attached to the idea that if I'm not in pain, it means I don't love them anymore. And I love how you brought that up, because it doesn't mean that at all. Pain doesn't equal love, and you're in pain, true, because someone you love died, but you don't have to attach yourself to the pain. And I see that also with dreams. Some people have these negative dreams of their loved one. And I always sort of suggest that, if you work on different aspects of your grief, it can actually help. And then maybe you'll get some more positive dreams. But they're so afraid to work on their grief because they say they may not. What happens if the dreams stop? Because even though it's negative, they get to see him again. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. So they're hanging on to this pain just to have these dreams, even though they're not even positive. They're just these negative images for fear that they might, lose the just the image of them in general. So yeah, I like how you were saying it though. So at the end, I'm glad you found that out, and you found a way to open your heart too, because that's a challenge, right? And I guess your wife helped you a lot, and finding something new to love can always bring that up and open you as you can. So it's interesting, like the other thing I want to say too is you have 2 songs that are based on loss, and the first one's like Never Forgotten, and you even say in the lyric something about that, which I thought was really cool, is that hold on to hurt so you don't fade away. And I think that's what you're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. That's where that line came from specifically, because you think that their memory is going to fade away because you're hurting less, and that was just a different way of saying it.
And so I love how you put so much of your own story within your music. So the other song that I heard at the Taps was What You Think of Me. And that song is what broke me down, and I just started crying. I'm like, what am I doing? I just cry. But it was touching my heart. And I want to sort of just ask you, where did that song come from?
We actually wrote that song. Craig, who played acoustic guitar with me, he and I wrote that song on the 10th anniversary of Aaron's death. And a lot of the lyrics, I think about the memories, the positive memories. There, is kind of a double-edged sword when you write a song like that. I wanted to tell the positive story about, the things that I remember about him and how I wanted to remember his life. And then I also wanted to let the listener know that, I honor him every time I sing, every time I perform. I honor him, and I want folks to know that a lot of what I tried to do is based off of an example that he set in a sacrifice that I'll never be able to make, because I'm not going to go back in the military and make that same sacrifice. The ultimate sacrifice and the ultimate gift to someone by laying your life down for them. I always gauged my performance standard in the military. I always gauged it based off of how Aaron performed. And, in music, Aaron couldn't sing a lick. But so but in that regard, still my standard of character and standard of living. Everybody that knew Aaron knew his standard of living and his character. And I always wanted to, I always wonder whenever the decisions I'm making, when I'm doing what I'm doing, am I honoring his sacrifice and honoring his memory the way that I should be? And I can't, think of a better way of saying it than in a song with that I got to write or that I wrote in his honor, telling him and essentially singing the song to him and saying, I wonder what you think of what you think of me when I'm doing all of this. So anyway, I just, the lyrics came naturally. It was probably one of the smoothest written songs that I was able to put together. Being able to, sorry, I'm umming when it comes to thinking about how I wrote a song and those pauses in thought, putting a song together that's going to be meaningful and poignant, but also tell a very genuine story about how I felt about my brother. And we had live oak trees in our front yard when we climbed in those live oak trees all the time. And when Steve would come home from the Ranger Regiment, he'd bring his rappelling ropes and, we would, swing out of the trees and do all that Army stuff. And we had, back in the day when you could ride your bikes out in the neighborhood and everything was safe. And, just those times in your lives when you're being nothing but kids. And now, you're looking at him not being there, but going from being kids and making the ultimate sacrifice to me now being an adult and trying to live up to, his, what would be considered expectations, but I don't think that he would have those expectations, my own expectations of what I feel his sacrifice was worth to me. That's really what this song is about. And I think that everybody out there who has lost somebody, they at one time or another, if they respected that person and loved that person, that they wonder during the times when they're weak or during the times when they're dealing with hardship or when they're not being the best possible person they can be, they wonder if that the person they lost is looking down on them and wondering if they're doing the right thing, and what they think of them. So I think that's why I think it may have been relatable to you, and anybody that's out there, because when you lose somebody that you care about, that kind of a song really hits home because it's a conversation that I'm sure many people have had with a person that they lost or in their lives.
No, it's so true. And I think those are the thoughts you think in your head. You don't really talk about it, but it, like, when you're making decisions, when you're just like reflecting on the time that has passed, like even for me, the time has passed since my dad died. There's definitely moments there where it's like, okay, what do you think of all this? Like graduating and doing this research and even the podcast, you're just like, like what are your thoughts? And are you proud? And as a son, that's where I get teary, right? Like, is this, because I always tried to make my dad proud, like throughout my whole life. And it's like, is this good, right? Like, is everything I'm doing making you proud? And it really sinks home because, like, I want to believe yes, right? But it's just those thoughts that, if he was here, he would be able to say yes or give that approval that you just don't get. And you're just like in that wonder and in that
always
grief. Yeah.
Yep, you're always in that wonder, and you don't have an answer other than your own and what possibly is.
Yeah. And so I'm guessing, since you talk about loss so much and you have speaking gigs where you share your story, do you get a lot of people coming up to you and telling them about their loss? And like, what's that like for you if that happens?
If I've got Gold Star family members or folks that have lost yeah, absolutely. I guess the best answer for that question is yes. And that was with, I don't know if you got to see, I wrote an article in the TAPS magazine this past, I don't know if you get the TAPS magazine, but I wrote an article in it, and essentially the article was called "You Don't Know What You Don't Know." I got the title actually from my wife for the article, but it's called "You Don't Know What You Don't Know," and essentially what it really encompasses is that you find yourself in a group of folks who really truly understand because they've been through that loss. Nobody's loss is the same, but it seemed to me that when I was hearing stories and multiple stories, obviously after I spoke about their loved ones, that there were a lot of similarities in each one of the stories as far as the way that folks felt about them, and especially when it comes to the military combat loss, and even the losses by suicide or losses by toxic exposure. There's still a common thread in that everyone seemed to be looking for someone they could talk to that really understood it, and it wasn't just like a counselor outside the box or someone to that regard, but someone who had actually experienced the loss themselves. And there's a kindred spirit there between folks who have experienced that loss. Unfortunately, it's a common bond, but the stories were just endless, and it was really, it opened my heart a lot as well, even more, to listen to other folks, to know that you're not alone in that loss. And I mean, my wife has never made me feel alone in any circumstance when it comes to it. She's been right there by my side. I think that, once she got to experience the loss with me, with Randy, she got to see it firsthand, and then it was a whole different ballgame at that point. But when it comes to losing your own flesh and blood, it's different. So yeah, I mean, I think that's probably one of the coolest things about, I say coolest in not in a bad way, but in a therapeutic way. But it's one of the coolest things that people want to actually talk to you and share their stories, and to be part somewhat of their healing process is a great thing. And especially when, to have somebody that trusts you with that much of an important part of their life to tell you about it. For me, it's an honor to have that position.
Well, that's beautiful, and I'm glad people do that. You're right; it makes your journey so much more meaningful too, right? And that that you're having an impact and just who you are. And I'm glad too, because after the show, people came up to you and you're talking to them, and I'm glad you give people the permission to come to you to share their story.
Oh, of course,
you're open to that, yeah.
It's just kind of like someone says, thank you for, honoring our heroes and thank our first responders, law enforcement, and military. And I couldn't see myself doing anything else. I couldn't see it any other way. Really couldn't. So.
Well, that's how the person's, true to their word and their heart's in it for the right reasons. So I love it. It comes to the music. So, if anyone's out there, please, listen to his music. We'll put some links to some videos you have in the show notes. But they're beautiful songs with any type of loss. And so I want to get to dreams. Have you had a dream of either Aaron or Randy since they've died?
I have had a couple of dreams of Aaron, and I remember one of them vividly, and the other one actually I remember both of them vividly, but one of them made a little bit of sense to me, and the other one I have no idea what it was about, because it was just, he was there. And the first dream that I had that I do remember vividly, he had a boat. Aaron liked to fish. He was an avid, he got put on the a Pro-Am boat, bass fishing, and actually outfished the professional angler, which was kind of cool. But he loved to fish, and in the dream there was a gray, it was almost a deep sea fishing boat that had like parts of a Black Hawk that were sticking out of the sides, like these foot posts that when you go up to the tail rotor to do a check on it on a Black Hawk. Those were on there. It was just this matte gray, and it was in our front yard and where we grew up. And I really didn't have much of a conversation with them. That was more, I was like, I can't believe you're here. And, I remember being upset and can't believe that you're here, and happy. I say upset, but like overjoyed, I guess. But then also at the same time, I knew that it wasn't real. And then I woke up. It's kind of one of those where I don't know if people have dreams like this all the time, but I'm petrified of heights in real life. and which is kind of interesting because I flew, but it's not the same feeling, and it's definitely if I could fall off of something and I know that I'm gonna die or really be hurt, my body just does weird stuff that I can't control. My legs get weak and other stuff. But so in my dreams, I used to fly or fall off of stuff, but I would be falling and know as soon, and then I would almost be conscious and know that it wasn't real, and then I would wake up. I don't know if that happens to folks a lot or not, but it happens to me. Well, in that circumstance, I realized that I knew that he wasn't alive, and then I woke up. And then the second one was in a house someplace, no idea where the house was, no idea what the thing was, and he was there, and he was happy, and once again, I knew that it wasn't real, and I woke up. So it was kind of there wasn't, I can't really say what they meant, what the dreams meant, or even other than the boat. I think that may have been some relational stuff, and obviously the Blackhawk stuff, and then, the boat itself for fishing because he liked to fish. But those were really the only two dreams that I've had of him, and I haven't, I remember when I woke up the first time, I woke up crying, but the second one, the crazy thing is, when, I don't know if it's happened to you or not, but you wake up and it's almost like there's a fraction, not anywhere close to the feeling, but that loss again, that feeling of loss again, because it was almost like they were there and then they weren't. But I remember waking up and feeling like I had just, gotten a phone call from him, and I knew it was the last phone call, or seeing it ahead of time, kind of a thing. I don't know. It was weird, but that's pretty much it. That's all I've got.
Hey, that's pretty good. I hear that a lot of these dreams can be very comforting in the sense of the imagery, or they're just a positive imagery. But when the person wakes up, it's like it was all a dream, and it's just the reality. It's like the mind switching to the reality of the loss, and that they are dead. Right. And then so it just brings up sort of that grief a little bit. But yeah, it's interesting how you become, basically the term's lucid. So you realize it's a dream and you wake up. I wonder, because a lot of people can't do that. It's not something that's very common. I think it's 10% of the population, lucid dreams or whatever. But I wonder if you didn't wake up, what the story would have been, right? Because a lot of times you see the deceased, and then there's this story that plays out. You'll talk and some things happen, but every time you realize it's a dream, you're waking up. So it's interesting. I wonder actually, what would you want if you didn't know, if you could stay in the dream longer? Is there something that you'd want to talk to him about or share or do?
Yeah, I think that, to be able to have another second of it, or a moment with him, to be able to sit down and tell him, how much I love him, and obviously the typical, if I was given another moment, statements, I'm sure. But for me, quite honestly, he's interviewed in the History Channel interviews for Black Hawk Down, the making of Black Hawk Down, and when I hear him talk, I lose it every time, because it's like he's there, but he's not, and it's almost like it's punishment to sit there and listen to him talk, and as opposed to being able to enjoy the fact that he was talking. To me, I look at it and it's tough, because I know that he can't anymore, and he's not alive. It hurts. It hurts really bad. My wife will tell you, we've watched the History Channel interviews for Black Hawk Down a couple of times, and I can't control myself emotionally whenever I hear him talk. It's just a whole different thing. It's on a whole nother level, because I didn't get the chance to say goodbye to him. A lot of folks don't get the chance to say goodbye to their loved ones when, obviously in the combat situation, when they die. And, I saw him just a couple of days before that, and those are the memories that I have of him left, and obviously some other memories, but those are the freshest memories, the newest ones. But then when I see him talk, it's almost like it's just like another dagger. So I mean, I avoid trying watching it. And for me, because it's knowing that if I was going to spend more time with him, that I was just gonna have to lose him all over again. For me, I've accepted the fact that he's not here anymore, and it's almost like you're just giving him to me to take him away again, I guess. I don't know if that's a way to, probably not a positive way to look at it, but for me, it's kind of, you know, if I'm meant to be with him, you know, in the afterlife, and then we get to hang out and we know it's going to be forever, then that's great. But otherwise, you know, it's like, hey, head, don't screw with me.
Well, I think you're being honest. It's like where it is and where your grief's at. And right. You know, like it's difficult. And these dreams, I'm guessing you said like when you had these dreams, maybe you wouldn't even want to talk in them because it'd bring up so much emotion. And it's just maybe just seeing him's enough for the to remember what he looks like kind of thing, and to sort of have that continuing bond in your sleep. Yeah, it's interesting. Yep. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Right. And you're finding a way to deal with your grief, and you're putting towards your music, and your emotion comes out through that. So yeah, that's it. But it's interesting how you become lucid. I think that's pretty unique.
Come on.
All right.
I like being
unique. That's true. Talking about being unique, you actually you started a couple, I guess, partner brands with some stuff. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'm a partner brand with 9 Line Apparel. I've got 5 designs with them. They're a military clothing company. Essentially, they're owned by a veteran who is a Apache pilot, and then went to the 160th and flew in the 160th as a Black Hawk Aviator. But they started 9 Line Apparel, and I have 5 designs with them. You can go on to 9lineapparel.com and search Ryan Weaver, and you'll find my designs. We have some ball caps and different things there, and shirts and all that. So I'm excited about that because it's been doing pretty well. And then I'm a partner brand with Lane Boots as well, Lane Boots. And you have the Ryan Weaver Old Glory by Lane Boots that are out in black and stone washed across the nation. You can find them on Boot Barn. You can find them at lane.com. You can find them on Nordstrom online, and they have several stores that have them on their shelves as well. And we're coming out with a brown version and an ankle zip version of the boots as well in January. So I'm excited to move forward with those, and working on another design for a spring or fall launch as well with them. So we got some pretty cool stuff working with Lane. Also partnered up with Liberty Home Concealment, which is a home concealment furniture company that has concealment flags for your home protection plan. With whatever firearm you may have, you can actually lock them up in a flag that attaches to the wall, and nobody knows that they're there, and unlock them in a quick manner to protect yourself in case of a home invasion. And also signed on just recently with a company called Soldier Socks. Soldier Socks is a SOLEDIER socks, and essentially they donate a pair of socks for every pair of socks that are purchased. They donate a pair of socks to a military service member deployed, which is really cool. And we're getting the design set for that and getting it ready for the holiday season. So really motivated about that as well, and can't wait to get that one out there.
Wow, you got a lot of things cooking in that potty. Right?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I'm also a partner brand with Forged Leather. That's FORJ''D leather. And they do red leather bracelets. And they're actually called leather cuffs. But for Remember Everyone Deployed Fridays, we always do Red Fridays. And you can go to forgedleather.com and order up a Ryan Weaver RED Friday bracelet too. So.
All right. Anything else you got?
that's about it right now.
You keep busy. You keep busy, I gotta say. And then I'm guessing you're touring, because I checked out your site. So what dates are coming up this year?
So to finish out the 2019 season, I'm actually flying out to Hawaii on November 7th to do a Marine Force Recon Foundation event. We're going to do an acoustic set and then sing the national anthem for a golf tournament and then play golf And then I'm flying to LAX on the 11th on Veterans Day, meeting up with my wife, and we're flying over to Australia to do 3 concerts with the professional bull riders in Townsville, Tamworth, and Melbourne, Australia for 3 weeks. And we're going to spend the last week after that, the 4th week, in the South Island of New Zealand for a little vacation time. Back on December 11th, and nothing going on for the rest of the year until we have a couple speaking engagements and funding this new music video that we've got that we're going to be filming in April.
Wow, beautiful. I wish, when you come to Canada?
I'd love to come up to Canada. My wife's brother-in-law lives in Vancouver. We love it up there. Vancouver's a beautiful city, and Whistler, we got to spend some time up there too. And we've talked on multiple occasions about taking a train all the way across Canada, do a 2 or 3 week or whatever it is, train vacation across Canada. Just got to be able to get in between the other things that we've got going on with her work in mind to be able to get out there and take that vacation.
That's cool, because I love BC. We're in Ontario, over by Toronto. So if you ever come to Ontario, let us know, and we'll get you back on, do some promo, and I look forward to hearing you again.
That sounds great. I appreciate you having me on.
Hey man, it took a little while, but we're here, and we had a great conversation. So once again, I just want to thank you from my heart to take the opportunity. I know you're busy with everything that's going on, to speak about your career and like your journey, because I find it so fascinating. And then also your loss. Like it takes a special person to be able to come on here and be vulnerable and open up, and then also to be able to be supportive of other people in their own loss. So, thank you for being who you are, and keep writing those songs from the heart.
Right on, man. I appreciate you having me.
All right. Is there anywhere else people can find you? If you want to shout out any like social media contacts or social media handles?
I'd say weavercountry.com is the website to find me on, and then facebook.com Ryan Weaver Country, and then Instagram is instagram.com Ryan Weaver Country, and my YouTube page, if you want to go on, is the only different one. It's actually Weaver Country. So if you want to check that out. And I don't spend a whole lot of time on Twitter, quite honestly, because I just don't understand it, and I'm not at the level to have 1 million Twitter followers, so it doesn't seem like anybody pays attention to anything I put on there anyway. So my Instagram and Facebook are my 2 primary social media pages. But then if you want to see some music videos and all that good stuff, you can go on my YouTube page and check it out.
And nice. And if people check out your EP, Celebrate America, have you, because I know the one song that I love so much, What You Think of Me, is that coming out on can you purchase that anywhere yet?
What You Think of Me has not been released yet. It's actually going to be out on a documentary series, but we're looking at doing a full album version of that. But we do have 2 new singles that came out that are off, or since after this Celebrate America EP. Arrival was released in March. I think that anybody that wants a workout song, motivational, kick butt motivational song, Arrival is a song for you. Time Like This is very similar as far as the motivational stuff is concerned, but we're actually funding a music video for Arrival right now to be filmed in April, which is going to be a pretty killer video. We're excited about it. It's going to be a good follow-up to Burn, my music video Burn. If anybody hasn't seen that, go check out Burn. And then we have Crank It. Crank It is also another music video that's out there. So lots of stuff to be able to take a look at.
Nice. So if you want to run or if you want to cry, you got everything covered in your repertoire.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to run, work out, do all that kind of stuff, listen to Arrival. You want to cry, watch Never Forgotten. And yeah, there you go.
Beautiful. And we'll put some of those videos in the show notes. So if you guys want to listen to it, please check it out. They're amazing. But yeah, once again, thank you so much for coming on. Just to wrap up with our stuff, you can check out our platform at griefdreams.ca. You can find information on the topic of dreams, common questions, everything you need to know is on there. We had a donation button if you want, with some perks. If you want to donate and support us, you can. We also have Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Just check out the website. Instagram is where we do most of our activity, and that's at Grief Dreams. And we have another one called at the Grief Dreams Podcast. So with love and gratitude from us to you.
I have questions.
I have introduced myself. You have introduced yourself. This is a very good conversation.